My father-in-law grasped my hand softly, his calloused fingers brushing against the delicate skin of my wrist in a movement that, while appearing nonchalant, carried an unmistakable purpose. His warmth seeped into my skin, a secret touch that lingered longer than it should have. I studied him intently, my hand lingering for a moment longer, as an unsettling tickle crept up my arm. "And if we linger until he drifts into slumber, you know," he murmured in his deep, measured tone, almost enchanting. My breath was stifled, his voice brooked no argument, yet he pressed on. "Indeed, I propose that, should you concur, I shall proceed, maintaining that calm and compelling rhythm. I wish for it to be rooted in mutual consent, for when both parties are in agreement, the experience is far more enriching." I raised an eyebrow and feigned ignorance, though the reality was that his suggestion was as transparent as crystal. "What are you saying, father-in-law?" He wore a smirk, as though he relished my futile effort to sidestep the evident. His thumb started to trace circles on the back of my hand, and that touch, gentle yet purposeful, ignited an electric current that coursed through my skin. I sneezed softly, attempting to regain my composure, yet his eyes were already fixed upon me. "What are your thoughts on the matter?" "No, don't even consider it. That's not right," I asserted, attempting to sound resolute, though my voice betrayed me with a subtle quiver. "Don't do it," he whispered, his face dangerously close to mine, his warm breath brushing against my cheek. "I understand that you desire it as well." His closeness was suffocating, and his aura captivating. I recognized that game. We had traversed this terrain once already. His words ignited a flame within me that I believed had long been extinguished, yet simultaneously, an unsettling sensation coiled in my chest, a burden whose nature I could not discern, whether it was guilt or a sense of eager expectation. "It had been ages since anything at all had transpired with me," he pressed on, his voice laced with reproach and a suppressed yearning. "And you claimed this would never come to a close. We merely needed to bide our time," for he remained oblivious to it all. His gaze pierced through me with a perilous fervor. "It has been over 60 days, and the reality is, I find myself in need of some assistance," he stated, his tone carrying an air of insistence veiled as a request. "Keep in mind that it was you who set everything in motion, and now I find myself at a loss for what to do next." I bit my lower lip, sensing the warmth rising along my neck. Heat flooded my cheeks beneath his intense gaze. I might refute his claims, yet the emotions coursing through me at that instant were undeniable. He extended his hand, and with the back of his fingers, he brushed against my skin, a brief yet passionate touch. His touch ignited within me, a slow-burning fire that radiated from my cheek to the nape of my neck. His gaze remained fixed on mine, unwavering, yet I could sense the way his eyes wandered between my neck and my lips, repeatedly returning to those same spots with a hint of disdain. The electric sensation coursing through my skin was unmistakable, a sharp tickle that compelled me to instinctively adjust my neck. He perceived it, and a faint smile played upon his lips. He slowly licked his lips, as though relishing the anticipation. He leaned in further, his face hovering perilously close to mine. The atmosphere thickened, brimming with an electric tension and an undercurrent of something more sinister. His perfume, a delicate yet bittersweet blend, wrapped around my senses, shrouding them in uncertainty, sowing seeds of doubt within me. My breath quickened, and a haze enveloped my thoughts. Yet, in that moment, the enchantment shattered. "Where are you, my love?" The sound of my husband's voice echoed from the living room. His words resonated with an immediate effect. My father-in-law ceased to be dry, and his expression transformed. A glimmer flickered in his gaze, yet its meaning eluded my understanding. I stepped back, attempting to catch my breath, trying to reassure myself that nothing had transpired, even as the remnants of that moment seared into my skin. "How are the snacks faring?" he inquired, his hands rubbing together with eager anticipation. "The odor is already wreaking havoc on my insides." I spun around swiftly, attempting to mask the unease that continued to pulse through my veins. My father-in-law, in contrast, could only manage a calm smirk, the kind that only someone well-versed in concealing their feelings could muster. "Patience, my boy. Everything is nearly prepared," he replied with an air of ease. My husband sank into one of the chairs at the table, letting out a sigh, and crossed his legs, a look of concern etched on his face. "Oh, and just so you know, Dad, I extended an invitation to my sisters, but I have a feeling they might not show up. Will your husbands not permit them?" The question lingered in the atmosphere, attempting a nonchalant demeanor, yet carrying an underlying hint of skepticism. I observed my father-in-law pausing thoughtfully before he responded. "I don't know, son," he mused, leaning over to pour himself a drink. "Yet I believe they shall arrive." "Hey, Dad, is it true that my younger sister's husband is seeing someone else?" I was caught off guard by the question. My heart, still pounding fiercely, twisted within me. A subtle shift enveloped the atmosphere in the space. The clinking of the spoon against the pan as it stirred the sauce grew increasingly pronounced. The television reverberates in the space, as if it has drifted into the distance. My father-in-law set the glass down on the table with a soft click, his fingers tapping the surface with deliberate slowness. "They mentioned something out there, but I can't say for certain if it's true," my husband continued. "People can be unpredictable. A small issue can quickly escalate. If there's any truth to it, I believe we must alert my sister. I would prefer they not portray him in that manner. There is no greater agony than to be forsaken by the one who holds your heart." My breath grew shallow, my lips scarcely parting. Was it a remark lingering in the atmosphere? Or could it have been an indirect one that transcended his sister? For a fleeting instant, I sensed his gaze linger on me with an unusual intensity, as though anticipating my response. The first to shatter the stillness was my father-in-law. "You're right, son," he said with a serene demeanor, lifting the glass once more to his lips. "Let us set aside the whispers and rumors. Indeed, it seems that misunderstandings abound in every conversation." I found myself unable to tear my gaze away from my husband, searching his eyes for even the faintest hint of doubt or suspicion. Yet his demeanor persisted, unchanging as ever, exuding a sense of calm assurance. Then the house bell rang, slicing through the silence like a gunshot. All three of us arrived simultaneously. As my father-in-law rose to his feet, he brushed his fingertips gently against my back, a fleeting touch, almost undetectable to an unobservant eye, yet I felt it keenly. A sensation of itching crept across my skin, and the tension I thought had been vanquished began to weave itself back into the space between us. On the opposite side of the door, a presence lingered, and an unsettling intuition gnawed at me, whispering that eventually, all that was concealed would be revealed. The door creaked open, unveiling the silhouette of my sister-in-law and her husband, their faces alight with broad smiles, and a couple of bottles clutched in their hands. The scent of luxurious perfume wafted through the room as my sister-in-law advanced with purpose, and without a moment's pause, she flung herself into my husband's embrace. My little brother exclaimed with a fervor that felt entirely natural to me in her presence. "My longing to see you is immense." He embraced him with fervor, clinging a bit longer than required, as his enchanting laughter echoed in my ears. In quietude, I watched the gesture, feeling a twinge of unease. It was not the first instance of my sister-in-law displaying her affection towards my husband, yet the manner in which she draped herself around him felt excessive. Perhaps it was my own actions that led me to perceive shadows where none existed. In that moment, her husband lingered at the threshold, silently offering the bottles to me, his expression unreadable. As his fingers brushed against mine while handing them over, I lifted my gaze to express my gratitude. In that instant, I caught sight of his eyes fixed on me, their intensity rendering me utterly insignificant. His shadowed gaze lingered on my form, a flicker of shame dancing just beneath the surface, though he endeavored to conceal it. The silence stretched, allowing me to catch the subtle shift in his demeanor. His expression bore no trace of confusion, nor did he make any effort to conceal it. It was not the first occasion on which I caught him gazing at me in that manner, Yet this time an unfamiliar quality lingered in his demeanor, a confidence that unsettled me, entwined with a perilous, elusive predicament that defied definition. My father-in-law's touch was delicate, yet his voice, though composed, carried an undertone of authority. "Well, go ahead and sit down. We were already waiting for you," he said, his tone leaving no room for argument. The intensity of his gaze bore down on me, and for a brief instant, I questioned whether he too had perceived that ephemeral moment, that look that lingered on my neck with unmistakable intrigue. My sister-in-law clung to my husband's neck, her arms entwined around him, while he, with a nervous chuckle, attempted to extricate himself with a touch of finesse. His husband lingered nearby, an air of anticipation surrounding him, as though he were poised for an impending moment. The bottles in my hands grew heavier, as if they bore the weight of unspoken words, lingering in the air with an unmistakable tension. I found myself torn between two unsettling realities: the desperate way my sister-in-law clung to my husband and the unabashed intensity with which her husband scrutinized me, his gaze unyielding and unapologetic. My sister-in-law's husband leaned in just a fraction, ensuring that his voice was a secret meant solely for my ears. "How about we grab some snacks while they engage in their own conversation?" He spoke with a note of concern in his voice. "Indeed, it appears that we are the last remaining souls here." He delivered it as a jest, a faint smile playing at the corners of his mouth, yet there was an intensity in his eyes that suggested a deeper meaning behind his words than I was prepared to acknowledge. A nervous laugh escaped my lips, an attempt to diminish his significance, and as I started to rise from my seat, my father-in-law's grave voice cut through the air, halting the moment. "Why don't you stay? And I'll assist my daughter-in-law," he said, his tone steady yet resolute. "Regardless, I find a sense of purpose in contributing to something meaningful." The atmosphere was somewhat tense. My sister-in-law's husband smiled, yet there was a subtle glint in his eyes, a slight sharpening that caught my attention. "No, father-in-law, how can you doubt? That is precisely our purpose." "You'd better catch up with your children," he said without a moment's pause, then turned to me, nodding his head as a signal. As we approached, I swallowed hard, a wave of discomfort knotting itself in my chest. I strode ahead of him, the click of my heels echoing against the wooden floor, each step intensifying my unease. I was acutely aware of his presence trailing behind me, yet it was the intensity of his gaze that sent a chill down my spine, as if it could penetrate my very being. She moved with an effortless confidence, pausing at the gentle curve of my waist, the fabric of my skirt clinging to my hips with an almost mathematical exactness. For a fleeting instant, the urge to pivot and voice my thoughts surged within me, to halt the tumult brewing in his mind, yet I found myself paralyzed by hesitation. What could I say to him to make him cease that gaze, to remind him that his wife was present, that his shame was rendering me exposed, and there was an unspoken truth I was reluctant to confront? I pressed my lips together and continued my stride, acutely aware of the fabric of my skirt brushing against my skin with every step. The delicate white blouse, crafted from airy fabric, allowed a glimpse of my back, inviting the gentle breeze to caress my skin as it meandered through the house. My sister-in-law's husband reclined against the kitchen wall, a smile playing on his lips, as though he were savoring a game whose rules were known only to him. "And tell me," he suddenly released his grip, his tone nonchalant yet revealing, "how have you been feeling lately now that your husband is present?" The remark caught me off guard. I lifted my gaze and discovered his eyes locked onto mine, shimmering with a suggestive light, as though that question carried a hidden sharpness. I responded with a hint of caution, "I feel good. It brings me joy to have you by my side at this moment." He lifted his eyebrows, feigning interest, yet his smile broadened with an unmistakable hint of mockery. "Uh-huh," he whispered, tapping his fingers rhythmically against the surface of the wood. "As for the other matter, how did you conclude it? Did you put it on hold, or did you choose to abandon it entirely?" Instantly, my body became rigid. I traced my finger thoughtfully and nodded, attempting to unravel the meaning behind his words. "What do you mean by that?" I inquired with a resolute tone. He emitted a soft chuckle, as though my response amused him. He leaned in slightly, closing the gap between us in a manner that felt unsettling. "Do not be naive," he whispered. "I am well aware of the network you were part of." The breath caught in my chest, and a shiver coursed down my spine. "I do not arrive to cast blame upon you, nor to level accusations. I proceed with a measured tone, savoring my astonishment. As long as my silence is adequately compensated, the ground beneath me felt as though it were giving way. My mouth turned to dust, and the words lodged themselves in my throat. "I don't quite grasp what you're saying," I reiterated, though my voice quivered more than I intended. He released a feigned sigh and inclined his head in acknowledgement. "If you wish, I can remind you of everything right here, or in the presence of your father-in-law and your husband," he said, his tone measured and deliberate. "Your decision is paramount. I am content to follow your lead in all matters." He regarded me with an unsettling confidence, as though he possessed an intimate knowledge of my forthcoming response. "Ultimately, I possess evidence," he remarked, nonchalantly shrugging his shoulders, "and you won't escape this predicament unscathed by guilt." His eyes roamed unabashedly over my form, and his smile took on an even sharper edge of cynicism. "However, let us refrain from twisting the issue excessively. Truly, my silence holds no great cost. What I seek is not a difficult request." He merely requested a slice of that exquisite delicacy, nothing more, nothing less. A tumultuous wave surged within me, coiling into a tight knot of anger, fear, and disgust. It was almost unimaginable, the words that reached my ears. Just as I was about to respond, the kitchen door swung open unexpectedly. My father-in-law strode into the kitchen with purpose, yet upon catching sight of me, he halted abruptly. His gaze lingered on my face, a flicker of suspicion dancing in his eyes. "What is happening in this moment?" he inquired with a measured cadence, yet underscored by a cautionary halt. I compelled a smile to grace my lips, even as a chill enveloped my skin and a tumult brewed in my stomach. "Nothing, father-in-law," I replied with the utmost composure I could muster. "We have already indulged in the snacks." His eyes drifted from me to my sister-in-law's husband, who clutched the bottle in one hand while managing a strained smile. "And you, dear father-in-law, what keeps you from your children?" He shrugged his shoulders. "They asked me to get a corkscrew," he replied with a lightness that belied the tension in his voice. I seized the opportunity to take action. I spun around without hesitation, my hands darting through the drawers with urgency, as though that singular task held the weight of the world. Their gazes were fixed upon me, and a heat of tension coursed through my skin. Upon discovering the corkscrew, I grasped it and passed it to my sister-in-law's husband, avoiding direct eye contact. "Take it," I commanded with conviction. "Now we shall come to you." He grasped the object for a brief moment, remaining still, as though uncertainty lingered within him. Ultimately, with a gentle smile and a significant glance, he pivoted on his heels and exited the kitchen. I inhaled slowly, sensing that the air scarcely filled my lungs. I pivoted gradually, presenting my back to my father-in-law, struggling to swallow the lump in my throat. Unbeknownst to me, he drew near, and I sensed his powerful hands settling on my shoulders, an unexpectedly warm gesture that took me by surprise. "What is happening?" He spoke in a voice that was both low and gentle. For a fleeting moment, I shut my eyes, lost in uncertainty about my next move. I needed to share with him the events that had just unfolded, to convey the chilling words that had rendered me motionless, the subtle menace that lingered in my thoughts. Perhaps the wisest choice was to harbor it within, to confront this solitude, untouched by the presence of others. Ultimately, should I choose to engage with my sister-in-law's husband, that would remain a matter solely between the two of us. Are you curious about the conclusion of this tale? Please share your thoughts in the comments below. I am grateful for your willingness to listen and for the time you've devoted to my narratives. Before I take my leave, I encourage you to subscribe to my channel and activate the notification bell. Don't forget to give a thumbs up if you enjoyed the content. A warm embrace from your friend Lucy. Until we meet again.